Have you ever stopped and wondered what it would take for you to completely abandon the person you know yourself to be and walk down a completely new path? Springsteen had a line in his song Straight Time. He said, you can get used to anything. Sooner or later, it just becomes your life. And man, is that true. Sure, we adapt to certain changes. Some friends come and go, relationships fail, careers change, or maybe we end up moving to a new place to write the next chapter. But have you ever imagined what it would be like to remain in the same neighborhood, working the same job, being around the same people, and yet have everything you know your life to be completely change without warning? The story I'm about to tell you is not a pretty one, but it is a story worth hearing. And if you can suspend any preconceived notions or judgment, you might walk away from this video with a fresh perspective, or at least a good feeling. Not terribly long ago, I lost a friend of mine, and his story, his transformation, was like something out of a movie. He lived the same life for the longest time, and then one unexpected moment forced him into a brand new world. My friend grew up in Southern California, and he came up in a gang-riddled area. He was an only child. His parents had had him later in life, so his formative years ended up being largely spent on the streets. And it started innocently enough. He'd go to punk rock shows, skate parks, and loiter around local shopping malls like most teenagers do. And you see, this was back in the late 1980s. So there was no internet, no social media, no convenient way to make friends. And he ended up hanging out with a couple of hombres down there at the skate park, and they'd convene after school, and before long he was cutting class to go tag graffiti with them, and not long after that they were stealing bicycles and other petty crimes. See, these boys that he had saddled up with were in an up-and-coming street gang, and it was one that was gaining some pretty serious clout and notoriety in their area. And as these guys got a couple years older, my friend was introduced to the rest of their crew, and they took a liking to him. He had been loyal to the two boys he knew, and they showed him love. Sometime later, what had began as petty theft grew into bigger crimes, stealing cars, breaking and entering, things of that nature. And the crew wanted loyalty out of my friend, since he was now directly involved in some of these things. So they brought him in, and he spent the next 15 years a loyal soldier to their establishment. His childhood friends had turned him on to what became a new life. And I watched him go in and out of jail. He did a stint in prison, and despite that, he never broke. His sense of loyalty to the life was thorough. He never made their business anybody else's, and he earned a solid and fearsome reputation in that world, depending on who you asked. By the time he was in his mid-20s, he was covered in nothing but scars and tattoos, and the kind of tattoos that read like a rap sheet. One look at this guy, and you knew exactly what he was, and you knew he had been through some pretty serious stuff. If I'm being honest, he was one of those friends that I think we all have at some point in our lives, where he was always good to me, but he came with a pretty nasty reputation in the world that he called his own. Because you can't be a loyal soldier in a street gang and not have enemies. And me knowing that he was involved in some of this dangerous stuff and how he was in and out of the system, well, part of me was always waiting on that phone call, the call saying that he had been taken out, and it bothered me. I remember asking him one time why he didn't see more to life than what he did, but I was ignorant. I've never been in a gang. I didn't grow up out there. I didn't know his friends. I only knew him. But when I asked him, what he said was pretty firm. They had been as loyal to him as he had been to them. And I don't think anybody has to be in a gang to understand how that works. Few people are blessed with loyal friends to begin with, much less people loyal enough to risk their lives for you. So ultimately, I had to respect and accept that. After one of his stints in jail, my friend met a woman who didn't come from that world. She was a pretty wholesome and modest young lady, and they fell in love. If he wasn't with his crew, he was with her. And I remember how after a year or two, his life began to come into conflict with her dreams. She wanted to settle down and start a family. And she knew so long as he was messing about on the streets that was not going to happen, or at least not efficiently. So she asked him to leave the life. And of course, he got angry and refused. I mean, after all, she didn't understand. This was all he knew. And he's going to be damned if anybody was going to talk him out of it, even the woman he loved. He also knew you can't just put in your notice when it comes to a gang. You don't retire from that world. Now, there's stories of people maintaining inactive status, but generally speaking, you're on call to your crew until you die. So she left him, and he was devastated. Some months later, she called him and let him know that she was expecting a child and that they needed to talk. I remember him being nothing but happy at the thought of being a father. And after all, he did love her, and he was not scared of the idea of fatherhood. But once he got to thinking about the world he was about to bring this child into, it terrified him. I remember him calling me and saying, "Man, what am I going to do?" He was stuck between the world that he had spent his lifetime in and this new life that was about to join him. His plan at first was to carry on as usual, just to do his best in protecting the child from the things that came with the life. And he told his girl as much too, explained to her why he couldn't just walk away. I don't know the details, but they reconnected and decided to get married. You should have seen the wedding too. It was a sight. Can you imagine this straight-laced, middle-class gal's family sitting there adjacent to a bunch of textbook gangbangers? It was a trip. Anyway, fast forward some months later, and my buddy called me from the hospital one day. And his daughter had just been born. It was the only time I ever heard him cry. I answered the phone. "Hello?" And all he said was, "I'm done, bro." I was a bit confused. "Done?" I asked. And he said, "Man, I'm standing here holding my little girl, and I can't do it anymore." "Do what?" I asked. He said, "The streets, jail, the life. I'm out." That man had taken one look at that little girl, realized his responsibility to her, and was changed. And it wasn't just talk either. I don't know what kind of arrangement he made with his crew, and frankly, that's none of my business, but he never went back. Not to the life, not to jail. Never got involved in any other type of crime, and he devoted himself to that child, knowing that it came with real risks. But he saw protecting her as more important than protecting himself, more important than protecting his reputation or his past. There he was for the longest time, loud and proud, in a world that he wouldn't walk away from, that he felt he couldn't walk away from. And then, in this unexpected instance, his entire life became a relic of the past. All he had to do was look into the eyes of that child, and a whole new world opened up for him. My friend went so straight and narrow that he had a dad bod before the kid turned 5, which is a far cry from the street soldier I'd known for all those years. He and the girl's mother didn't work out in the end, but he stayed present, and he was a solid dad right up until he passed away. And while he still had love for the guys in his old crew, he came to regret many of the things he had done that were dishonest and ugly. It took seeing that little girl's face, looking her in the eyes. It hammered it home. And I watched a profound change within him. Before anybody asks, since I mentioned he had passed away, no, the streets didn't catch back up with him. A bad medical procedure got him in the end. And he went out the same man he had become the day his daughter was born. And it taught me that sometimes, even when we think it's unfathomable, we can outgrow our old selves. And I don't think it's a choice. I think it's a calling. Now, what kind of calling that is can be debated ad nauseum. But I watched it happen. I watched this friend of mine who lived for the streets come to live for his child. And that was very inspiring to me. I'm glad I got to witness it. And I hope he rests in peace. Have you ever outgrown your old life? You ever had an unexpected shift that pulled you into a new version of yourself? I'd love to read about it if you have. Leave it in the comments. And if you know somebody who might benefit from hearing this, your own version of my friend, feel free to send it their way. And also, to those of you that have been showing up regularly since I started posting consistently, I notice you, and I appreciate you. Seeing the same names in the comment section means a lot to me, and I want to thank you for helping me build this little community of ours. With that said, I will see you next time. Y'all be well.